This episode is brought to you by the Command Presence Leadership Institute. Find out more by visiting commandpresence.net.
Welcome to the Faces of Leadership with Michael Warren. Be the leader you wish that you had.
Welcome to the Faces of Leadership podcast, where we believe that leadership is about two things. It's about people and it's about actions. We talk with leaders from across society who are stepping up to do what they can, where they are with what they have. The question is, what can we learn from them? What can we learn from each other as we strive to be the leader we wish we had? Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Warren, and I'm your host. Thank you so much for being with us today. And folks, I sure hope that you had a chance to listen to our episode from last week where we spoke with Kristen, because it was a blast of a conversation. But I have to be honest with you, as fun as it was, being at Northern Exposure last week and watching the interaction with the people and being able to interact with those same people, those people that she brought together for this experience of getting better and making each other better as leaders was phenomenal. I can't thank her enough for including Command Presence in that endeavor. It certainly was a pleasure for us. But on to today's guest. Our guest today is the National Vice President of T-Mobile for Government. He is a 25-year expert in wireless communications. He is a Washington, D.C. USO Advisory Board member, a City of New York John Jay College of Criminal Justice Veteran Roundtable member as well. He is the chair of T-Mobile's Public Sector Advisory Board. He has found pride in his work as a foundational member of Project 10M, which is T-Mobile's $10.8 billion commitment to youth STEM, making sure no student who needs connectivity is left behind. Since 2018, he and his team have connected over 5.4 million students with wireless broadband across the nation. David is also a founding member of Connecting Heroes, a $7.7 billion commitment to ensure first responders have access to the critical communication tools needed. He was instrumental in whitelisting the VA's Telehealth solution, making sure any veteran who has a need to connect remotely to a physician at a critical time can do so without any cost of that data session on any brand of service, T-Mobile, Sprint, or Metro PCS offered in the USA. On a personal level, he is the owner of an urban fruit farm raising cherries, apples, peaches, pears, and Italian plums while donating 90% of that produce to families in need free of charge. He is the father of three and an individual who is deeply committed to the bright future of America. Folks, please welcome to the podcast, David Bezzant. David, welcome to the program.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here.
You know, it's an interesting thing as I was going through your bio here. I'm going to start at the end first if I could.
Please.
Oh, yeah, because you own an urban fruit farm and you raise some things that I really, really like. What made you decide to get into that little foray, if we will?
I know, thank you so much for asking the question. And it is a pretty interesting journey. My grandfather was a fruit farmer and a steel worker. So he worked at a steel plant primarily. And then in his whatever time he had left, it felt like his life was 24/7. He would raise cherries, apples, peaches, and pears. And so I grew up with that. Always found it to be incredibly beautiful to be a part of blossoms when you're in the springtime, to watch the fall when leaves change, and then to go through the different harvest windows where cherries are first, peaches are next, and then pears come, and then finally apples. And so you kind of have a season where they come in cadence. And so when my grandfather passed away, he sold all of his properties as one holistic sale. And it was really devastating to us to see that happen and that change. And roughly 3 years or so after he had done that, I got a call from the city in which I live, and they said that the developer had changed their mind on the piece that was my grandfather's home and orchard, and that he was trying to sell it back to the city so that the city could potentially procure the land for a water tank and some other things that they had needed. And the developer certainly knew the value of the land because he was a developer, and therefore the city couldn't pay what he essentially wanted in terms of rate, and just gave me a heads up on it. And so we kind of cashed out in 2015 and spent our life savings to try and buy that back, and considered it a huge blessing to do that. And so we have 184 trees, and it's absolutely just a blessing to be able to get our hands dirty, try and teach our kids how to work, and to give back to the community. And so anyone who can't afford fresh produce can come and get it for free, no questions asked, at any time. And it's been a great opportunity for us.
What a great lead in, because it has been my experience, and I want to see if it's yours too. So many of the leadership principles that we talk about on the business side of things translate so well over to the family side of things, to being a parent and being able to teach your kids, hey, it's not all what you can take, it's also what you can give. That had to be just a great opportunity for you and the family.
There's a lot of lessons that go in there. The law of the harvest is an interesting one, where in life it's like, I want instant gratification. And, and you're like, wait a minute, I have to wait until the season in which that's ready. And I have to do all the prep work to get to the season. And then when it's the season, you have a certain window of time to deliver. And if you don't, the season will keep going with or without you. And there are a lot of lessons, both, from running an orchard's perspective to how that parallels into business and life. And I don't know how many people are, but there's a lot of office jobs these days. I certainly qualify as somebody who's in an office job, and to come in with scrapes on my arms at the end of the day, or a little bit of dirt on the clothes, is good for me. It's good for my soul.
It's interesting that you talked about your grandpa, because my grandfather's the reason why I started doing what I do.
Really?
He was a Georgia State Patrolman for 30 years, and he's the one that got me hooked on it. But something I didn't know till much later in life was that my in-laws have a place up in northern Michigan, up near Traverse City, Michigan, which is supposed to be the premier cherry place in the world, depending on you look at the.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a beautiful.
You in Washington. Yeah, that's a big rivalry, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. But see, when he retired from Georgia State Patrol, his passion was airstreaming. His favorite place to go was actually Traverse City, Michigan. And I never knew that until several years after my in-laws got the place up there. But I enjoy going up there. Listen, my kids love going up there during the summer, with the lakes and all that type of thing. But I actually enjoy going up in the fall and winter, because you get to see the full cycle of life. You get to see the full life of these trees. And it's just such a good reminder that life is cyclical, and that leaders have to be aware of beginnings and ends, and nothing lasts forever.
That's amazing. Michael, to hear your perspective and to hear, your roots from family. It's interesting because when I was a kid, it was pretty cool if you had packaged candy, or if your family had enough money to go get packaged candy. So I'll give you an example. If you went to like the high school football game and they had a stand, if you had enough money to go get whatever, a Snickers or whatever the packaged candy was at the time. And we never had that money. And I always had like an apple, like a fresh apple or something. And my mom would be like, here, just take an apple. I was super embarrassed to be hauling around an apple, like at the time when everybody else had, something that they went and bought and looked cool. And today it's the exact opposite. Like, most people wouldn't be caught with packaged candy, and they certainly want to strive for something healthy. And so your whole evolution or turn of the world also makes me smile from that perspective.
It has been my experience that those things that we produce with our own hands often taste just a little bit better, don't they?
They do.
and I can't explain it. I'm sure there's some science behind it, but it's probably psychological science, not physical science. But I think from a leadership perspective, though, one of the things that a lot of people miss out on is looking for opportunities to invest in others. This is a way of doing that. It carries over not only from your home life, but you also give back a lot at work too, don't you? I mean, it sounds like that's what T-Mobile's, it seems to be, that's a lot what they're about, is the opportunity to give back.
T-Mobile, the people at T-Mobile are gold. They are incredible people. It's one of the reasons I'm so proud to be associated with the organization. From our CEO, Mike Sievert, all throughout the entire organization, you have people who are very, very focused on not just what they do and what they produce, which is a high standard, but it is how they do it and how they give back and to make sure they're doing things the right way. And the kinds of commitments that T-Mobile has had, like our Project 10 Million program and commitment, a $10.7 billion commitment to school-aged youth. And it's a real, genuine effort to make sure that if any child in America that can't afford their lunch can get a free hotspot and free connectivity, by the way, for a duration of up to 5 years, to have that connectivity to help make sure that they're not sitting in any restaurant's parking lot to try and draft off of Wi-Fi or things like that. It's been really neat to be able to see that. And that's just one of many areas that the company has invested in first responders. If there's any first responder agency who can't afford cell phone connectivity, T-Mobile will also provide, per the chief's approval of the fire, police, or EMT division, they'll approve one line of connectivity per person as requested for up to 5 years at a given time. And so it's pretty neat to see that kind of work happen.
That's fantastic. So I want to talk to you about something that really has kind of weighed heavily on me for the past year or two. And you touched on it there. I think that we have to do a better job in American society of ensuring that access is available for everybody as much as possible. I mean, listen, I've been in some places, buddy, where there was no signal coming in. You couldn't even see light down in some of those hollers. But the truth is, though, we won't say what we're doing back there, revenuers, just saying. But it's one of those things where I think we wait too late in life to ensure that people have access. So, for example, it doesn't do any good, in my opinion, to try to force people into college if we haven't started preparing them back in kindergarten, helping them get prepared for school later on in life. Starting in kindergarten, it often comes with that ability to access materials. And in today's society, I mean, that's where a lot of kids get their coursework, is from being able to connect to the internet, correct?
Yeah, you're exactly right. Well, we're a digital society. Banking is digital. You and I are talking from two different states in a digital conversation right now. So communications is digital. Research is digital. I don't want to put a date on either one of us, but I vividly remember going to the local library to the card catalog and to find if the book I needed was in the library. And so you'd go to a Rolodex of where books would be, and you'd go to the section where it would be, try and look around and find it. Then once you found it, you got that information for a limited window of time. That is 24/7 by voice search and being enhanced by artificial intelligence today. And, it really is interesting, because what are we preparing people for? You and I mean, we're talking on a podcast, and I actually love your passion, that you guys have started this, and that you're having these conversations and you're creating history, preserving history, taking time and motion, and you'll always be able to look back on that. But in the 1880s, I think that some of the top jobs that people were seeking was coal mine sprayer and ditch digger. And I don't know, by the way, I have some very successful friends who do ditch digging, today, but I don't know how many people in their wildest dreams says, this is what I really want to go do. But I think being part of social media platforms, being part of influence, being part of all these elements are new careers that exist out there, and it's very valid work. But if you don't have access to the digital society, it's going to be very, very difficult to compete.
From from a leadership perspective, what it affords us are options and opportunities. The option to choose what I want to do and what I have a passion for, that's much more powerful than me being forced to do a job simply because I didn't have the access that perhaps others did have.
Yeah, an equal playing field really makes a big difference, right? If I start thinking about it, sometimes I can't even believe this technology works. Like, I am so grateful for the people who were like, miners who figured out how they would like look at the raw earth, find materials, then have the innovation that if you dig up just that material and you blend it together, you can create pieces of glass, metal, and plastic. And those pieces of glass, metal, or plastic are like our computer screens, our cell phones, our tablets, our laptops, and they're made of minerals that are mined from the earth. And who is so ingenious to like think of that and to be able to put it together? And then the way that this stuff connects is also mind blowing. Can you believe that invisible zeros and ones, binary code, are floating through the air? They're not visible to the naked eye, and they will only go to your device and decode by your device's IMEI, SIM card, an authentication method. And this is how the world talks. We do it in motion. We do it in air. We do it in sea. We do it like all over the place. And it is so cool to see the phenomena that we have. And I think I, for one, take it for granted. I'm like, of course, my phone or my stuff works while I'm going 60 miles an hour on a freeway having a conversation. Of course, I can see you when you're in Michigan and I'm out west here in Utah. And, it's crazy.
Well, just to be very frank with you, if it were dependent on me to come up with those wise things, we would look much more like Back to the Future 3 than Back to the Future 1 or 2, just saying.
Well, I know. Doesn't it make you, by the way, doesn't it make you grateful for the people who know how to build bridges, do dentistry, look at medical science, and the ingenious people who figured this stuff out? It's such a blessing.
You and I, we have a couple similarities. You probably don't want to admit that, but it's true. We travel for work, right? And you just think about flying now. You're at 35,000 feet. And quite honestly, that used to be lost time for people that were trying to do work. I mean, you had to take file folders with you. And if you forgot something, you couldn't work on it. Now you can connect to the internet on planes and you can send text messages on planes. I mean, think about the speed at which we're traveling and doing this work. I mean, you've been in this business for like 25 years. I mean, even in that 25 years, that the leaps forward that have been taken just have to be mind blowing.
It's crazy. I fly a little over 140 times a year. And you're right. It was lost productivity. And I'm smiling because you're right. I forgot about the times when you literally carried like folders of stuff, like you're like flipping through it, or even remember the CD wallet.
Oh, yeah.
The person who was really important had the big CD wallet, and you were like, wow, like that person has quite an audible range of choices here on the flight. And they had the Discmans and stuff like that. You had the one that skipped or didn't skip. Oh my gosh, we've come so far. But, we need to do like a national survey on if you fall asleep in the first 15 minutes of a plane, like, how, good parents can put their baby to sleep with like the right stroller walk or something.
Oh, yeah.
I have a very hard time as soon as I feel the vibration of the plane of not falling asleep at the first, and maybe I'm alone in that. And, but it's very important to be on and connected during that time.
I don't want this to sound wrong. Okay. But I don't want my kids to take things for granted. But I do appreciate the fact that they can take things like that type of communication for granted. Listen, I had my first, we'll say cell phone. I bought it right after I hit the road. I think I got like 25 minutes per month or something on the plan. And so, when my kids were young, I'd call them up. Okay, Daddy, what's thinking of you? We don't answer. Listen, if the kids aren't there, don't pick up the phone because it cost me a minute. And I've only got 24 minutes to go at that point. Yeah, I mean, you probably remember. But
you felt so important because you could make the call.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The worst thing about the way that they did the billing, like this was like all companies at the time, they rounded up. Like you didn't want to have a call that was like 1 minute and 1 second because it was 2 minutes. So you're like literally trying to figure out how to time these conversations in that window. And here we are in a day of like unlimited, where thank goodness we can just sort of talk, whatever. Also, do you remember when you couldn't call to the next city because it was a long distance.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And so you like knew no one that you could associate with in a neighboring community because it would just cost you a fortune. And oh my gosh, we've come so far.
My family, we moved from Georgia to Virginia after my 9th grade year. And, so all my friends are back in Georgia. And so for Christmas every year, I said, I just want like an hour of long distance. Right. And then you get that. But it's like, okay, we're going to wait till 9 o'clock at night because the rates go down.
The rates go down. Yeah. Like I forgot about that. I do remember being in college and dating someone out of the state, and Sprint had a card where like they gave it to you as college students. And if you dialed some crazy code, it was like now 10 cents a minute or something. And I remember that card was like very, very valuable to me to hang on to it. Those are great memories.
Oh man. You see the cards that brought back memories when I was young in my police career. I mean, that was part of investigations. Figuring out that was how you did part of the investigation, find out which phone card they use, and you'd arrest somebody, you'd arrested some drug dealer or something, and they'd have a whole bunch of different phone cards in their wallet. And stuff. In my patrol bag, I used to carry a roll of quarters. So I could,
if you had to make calls. I remember the Toyota vehicles had a place to put the quarters, and if somebody was like a complete baller, like you'd get in and you were like, damn, is that $2 a quarter sitting there right there? Like maybe like perfectly shined, like you wouldn't put a quarter in that ever had gum stuck to it or anything. Like the people who were really organized. So many people listening to this have no idea what we are talking about right now because they're young and modern. But a few of us in the middle age of our lives or even tipping over will remember that well.
There was a meme I saw last week that said, there was a time where each of us burned our last CD and didn't realize it was the last time we were doing that.
I remember getting my first iPod, and I got it at Costco, and it was like so cool to have it be like so small compared to like the Discmans or whatever. I didn't even have the real Discman. I didn't have enough money. I had a knockoff. It was very cheap. You were like, I was changing batteries in it and stuff like that. So I remember like, I'm like, wow, this thing's like all concise and it like charges. You don't have to change the batteries on it. And so anyway, long story short, I'm like, now how do I get music on this thing? And I had absolutely no idea. I had to find somebody who had illegally downloaded Napster. And I remember thinking about the federal implications if I allowed this person to download music that they'd had and like the moral dilemmas that I think people faced there. I think I somehow loaded one song on that thing and listened to it over and over. And we've come a long way.
So again, how does somebody in that type of profession where this type of change is taking place and it probably, I guess the thing that amazes me isn't the change is taking place, it's the speed at which the change is taking place. How does a leader go about, how do you go about handling the thing side of business while still dealing with the people side of the business? Because, it's people making that happen.
Yeah. The number one rule of anything is people come first and people matter. And that is literally the number one rule of leadership. And technology is a second seat to human beings. And so whatever we do, we need to make sure that we are thoughtful, connecting, and focused on the people that we're with and building relationships. And there's so much joy that comes from that. And I think great leaders probably find the most pleasure. That probably is their paycheck, is the connections that they get out of that. But when you take a look at how quickly things change, a brief story. I had a chance on my 25th company anniversary to go to Washington, D.C. to the Smithsonian. And I had a chance to be a part of the ribbon cutting event for the exhibit that was the history of the cell phone, basically. And the Smithsonian did a fantastic job with this. I didn't quite know what to expect, but they had found all of the minerals that you do mine to make devices, and they had clumps of the minerals, and they still have this. You could go there today. This was just last year. And take a look at that. They had the cables that they put like under the ocean to run cable and connect that are shark proof. And you when you look at the cables, you're like, it'd be pretty hard to bite through some of this stuff. But you're like, just seeing it, you're like, oh my gosh, this exists. But they show you the wall of all the things that the cell phone consolidated. That blew my mind probably the most. And let me describe things that it had on the wall that you're like, there's no way that had come and gone. One of them were like physical playing cards. Now, obviously, occasionally we get out the Uno cards or we play 21 or whatever, but largely digital gaming has replaced physical cards. Physical keys. When they showed physical keys on there, I'll be checking into a hotel tonight, and I got an email that said, hey, if you want to check straight in, just click here and your cell phone basically will work as the key. And so it's starting to replace physical items like that. They had the Garmin GPS system, which I remember forking out like $795 for one of these because, our fathers had to ask service station attendants where the directions were while they would argue with our mothers over like this whole process. And I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to type it in and like have it be there, and you like stuck it up on the window. Those were like $800. The devices all do it now. And so when you start to like look at it, Rolodexes, where you had a physical box, it looked like sort of recipes. And that's how I'd know your name, Michael. Like I'd be like, hey, I'm going to look in these cards and find your name, and I would dial you. So when you look at it, you're almost like, wow, how did all of these things like turn out to be like one single plane of glass, metal, or plastic? And I was a little bit horrified at how much some of these devices cost. You're like, really $1,200 or $1,300. But when you don't have to buy a camera anymore, and you don't have to buy a music player, and you don't have to buy a global position system, and you don't have to go get all these things, and now it becomes more of a digital ethos. Watching that and how quickly that happened blew my mind. One more thing. It's also scary about companies who are leaders or individuals who are leaders in their industry and how quickly time will go. And with all respect to my friends who are at BlackBerry, who built that revolution and helped change the world, I still get phantom vibrations on my hip to the credit of the people who invented that. That was the hardest device to pry out of my hands, I think, that I've held in the technological era. I liked playing Snake on the device. There were a bunch of cool things that I liked. 10 years ago, they were the leader, and they don't manufacture devices at all today. And that just shows you that you have to keep up with the times, and you have to keep evolving, and you can't take for granted a market position or a leadership position. That way, change, even if it's painful, working hard and innovating is always going to be there. With rule number one, people are at the center.
Technology gets a bad rap, in my opinion, a lot of times. Because of the manner in which it's used. And I keep going back that it's not the technology, because the same technology that allows for a kid to call for help, without having to leave their room, is the same one that maybe the kid stays up too late watching. It's in learning how to manage and utilize technology appropriately. But the truth of the matter is, we're not getting rid of it. So we have to find a way to live with it. And I think some of the stuff that you're doing, I mean, the whole idea with T-Mobile, their investment in youth and in STEM and those type things, it's about harnessing the power of technology for the good, with an understanding that if it's used inappropriately can be bad. Would that be an accurate description there?
It's a super accurate statement, and it's difficult. I meet with a lot of top leaders throughout the United States. Think of it as the who's who, of government institutions. And there's some amazing leaders, by the way. I would first start to say what you read online and who people really are tend to be quite different. There's a lot of sensationalizing of things to extremes that we're reading about. And you look at the people who are doing it. One of the most visible things that I'd ever seen happen was I was with, at the time, New York Mayor de Blasio. And we were in New York, and Mayor de Blasio had gathered up and worked really hard to get donations for $1.2 million to help people who did not have internet connectivity in the Batanzas housing project, some great people there. And we had contributed 1.2 million. So we had 2.4 million total dollars towards this project. And it was like around the holiday. It was in mid-December. And New York City had done a great job. The de Blasio team had done a great job putting this together. And the leaders of NYCHA, New York Housing Authority, had done a really great job. And the community and residents had really come out. 26 news stations showed up. And I'm like, this is going to be on the news. And this is going to be a really great story about the real work that is happening in government. Well, it was on the news. All the images were captured from that day. Not one word had come out about the 5,000 families that had been assisted by New York City. Instead, that media and imagery was about an alleged indictment of the mayor. And that almost ruined my soul that day when I saw what really was happening and what people were being shown, that is out there. And that's not a knock on the media. I don't know all of the reasons why people, communicate what they communicate if they had different concerns or a different element. But I do know that there's so many great people behind every screen, and there's so many great people behind every tool. And this stuff can also be, addicting, where people end up kind of foraying into a digital world where there are data points where people aren't paying attention when they're walking and they're falling, and getting injured. They're running into light poles. And there's elements like that where we're just like literally we're not socially aware. And so this stuff has to be used responsibly. And each one of us need to kind of make sure that we're checking ourselves on what is responsible. As a parent, I worry about myself sometimes, emails coming in, the types of calls that are coming in. And when I get home from work, I'm like, do I tunnel down into that, or am I making eye contact with the kids? Am I making sure that I'm, where I'm up to speed with them and we're good and they're good, as well as like keeping up with business.
But then I've got to go back to a different part of your intro where it talked about the VA's telehealth solution.
Yeah.
Well, what was that little project about? When I say little, I mean that facetiously. What was that project about?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Secretary Wilkie and Secretary McDonough, incredible leaders who have put their heart and soul into veterans around the country. And Secretary Wilkie at the time, we had a chance, I think in 2017 and 2018 to start to take a look at innovations. And the VA was very focused on serving healthcare and cutting wait times down. As part of their effort in doing that, they had gone to industry and said, who can help us take a look at that and innovate? And I tried not to call it too many companies, but Philips, Walmart were two companies who answered that bell for the VA and said that they would take a look at what could be done there. And T-Mobile was another. And one of the asks of the Veterans Affairs Administration is people have different data packages from wireless communications companies, and they may not have truly unlimited data. We think most T-Mobile clients do now, but at the time, they may not have had truly unlimited data. You might be avoiding doing a telehealth session because you're concerned that it would use all the data on your device, and you might have lots of other things to do in life than simply just have a medical appointment. And so they call it whitelisting. And so we were asked if we would consider whitelisting, which means that you could do a VA telehealth session and not have it debit the data, meaning it would be you still had all your data available to you, and you could do as many telehealth sessions as you wanted to do. And we were really proud to step up and get a yes on that. And at the time, our CEO, John Ledger, and Mike Siebert was our chief operating officer, and the president of our group was Michael Katz. And that leadership team came together and gave a strong and immediate yes that we would be able to do that. And they took it further. I don't know the exact budget of how much the advertisements cost for the entire month of May. I know it was in the millions. It may have been in the teens of millions. But T-Mobile canceled their regular television ads for the month of May, with Military Appreciation Month in May. And they ran the VA telehealth story instead of our regular commercials. And something really cool out of that happened. One, they were some of the highest rated commercials we'd ever run, which was, how cool is that? We weren't looking for that. It wasn't why we did it, but they were very well received. And the VA's telehealth went up by, I think, 1,800% to where veterans now became aware of it and could start to do that. And anyone, you probably do or don't remember this, but in the front of the Avengers movie that year, you had to watch the VA telehealth as the lead into the Avengers movie because we bought out every movie theater in terms of doing that. And so, partnering with the U.S. military and supporting our heroes makes me emotional. In fact, I may have to change the subject so I don't get emotional. But thank you to the women and men who have served this nation, and to those who work very hard to care for our heroes at the VA. There's always more work to do, but we were very proud of that.
My favorite podcast, don't tell my boss it's not this podcast, it's called the Human Behavior Podcast. I was actually listening to an old episode from about 3 or 4 years ago, and they were talking about the VA. And one of the guys, both the guys on there are veterans, but one of them says, listen, access to my VA is 3-hour drive away.
Yeah.
And he lives in Colorado, and that's not always a physical possibility. And so even things like telehealth, we've even started as a society taken for granted, even though it's a relatively new, in the grand scheme of things, technology that's available for people.
By the way, if you've never done telehealth before, I highly encourage you give it a shot. It is so fantastic. You don't drive anywhere. You're I very frequently, and maybe everybody has different healthcare providers, can get an appointment within an hour on telehealth. When I say the appointment happens within an hour of booking it, you're I need to see a doctor. And an hour later, you're in a video call with a doctor, and they can write a digital prescription if one is needed. And they're incredibly acute at asking you what your symptoms are. No differently if you were there. You just don't have the blood pressure monitor on you, and you did not get a popsicle stick down the throat. But the rest of the experience is really fantastic. And by the way, the VA, the absolute leader in telehealth, they were I think the first to do it in mega scale. Dr. Galpin and many others as part of the VA, great innovators and some fine folks over there.
I tell you what visionary people always amaze me because they can see the future for what it can be. But yeah. Not only can see, but they can put it together. So we're to the part of the show here where I just give you real quickly my takeaways.
Please.
And it gives you the chance to correct me if I'm wrong, okay?
Please, go for it.
Takeaway number 1, technology comes with responsibility, no matter what the technology is. But that's the same thing as in life, and the leader's willing to take responsibility, just as you are as a parent, ensuring that your kids are using it properly.
Yeah.
Man, and you didn't come out and say this out loud, but one of the things I took away from several things was sometimes the answer is external. And you talked about working with some of these companies and getting out. The VA couldn't solve the problems themselves, so they had to go external. And I think leaders are willing to look beyond their sector, or their industry, or their company when the situation calls for it.
That's an impressive pickup on that, and I love that call out.
This, again, you didn't say it directly, but informed decisions tend to be better, and technology increases the amount of information we can gather so we can make better decisions.
Yeah. Can I expand on that just slightly?
Absolutely.
I know you're doing recaps. Maybe it's just me. My weight fluctuates a lot of airplane cookies, a lot of airport food, in a hurry, sitting a lot. Somebody told me that they counted their calories, and I was like, what? How annoying. I would never want to do that. And then I started to think about it. It took me 3 or 4 days to materialize that maybe I would actually want to do that. And I started tracking my macronutrients and tracking my movement. And all of a sudden with data, I could see when I gained weight and when I started to go into patterns of being unhealthy, and I could see when I was healthy. And I found out that when I took 10,000 steps a day, my health was typically in check. And when I took more steps, the things that I ate tended to be healthier just by coincidence of what my body needed. The data-informed decisions that are possible to us through these types of things are really powerful. And I love that you have that one as a call-out, because it may help how long we live. It may help a number of different factors that are really good for us.
We teach in our classes at Command Presence that things need to be credible and defensible. And what makes things credible and defensible are research facts. beliefs aren't enough, because beliefs must be rooted in facts in order for them to have any real advantage. And this is, take advantage of what's there. I bet if I ask you this question right here, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Or you alluded to going to the library earlier and open up the card file. Every card file smelled the same. It's like you.
They did. I can smell it now. I like it's weird, but I can smell it now. I can smell the library now. I don't know why, but I can.
It's like National Treasure on a much smaller scale. You know?
on a much smaller scale. Yes, I do love that movie, but yeah, the scale was like tiny. Local library. Mm-hmm.
All right, so two things we teach in our leadership class, and we only got two more here. Two things we teach in our leadership class is that leaders see a need and fill the need, and leaders do the right thing at the right time for the right reason. The whole time you're telling me the story of the VA telehealth thing, and I got goosebumps right now. The whole time you're telling me about that, that's leaders saying, you know what, this needs to be done. Let's get it done because it's better for everybody, but it's particularly better for our veterans, and that's what it's all about.
I mean, that was the decision of the top of this company, was that they had a lot of risk. You're trying to get your subscribers and do your thing amazing when you put people first and do the right things.
Well, and it's funny you should say that, because that was the top takeaway for me. People first.
People first.
Even in a technology company, leaders understand that people have to come first. And when they do, the product always ends up better. Always does.
Yeah. I had a boss. He was a captain. I believe, I hope this is accurate, but I believe he was a captain at West Point on their hockey team. He was just an incredible leader. I know for sure he played on the hockey team. I think he was a captain. And one time really early in my career, someone in Dallas was getting cubicles delivered. And, this boss of mine, he had a big scar on his chin. I'm pretty sure from a hockey puck. I remember that he could bench press 225 pounds like it was nothing in reps. I remember walking by the gym at the office one day, watching him do that. And so this is a tough guy. And apparently, whichever company was getting these new cubicles, one of the people unloading them, they fell off of the truck, and it killed a person in the parking lot. And Rob didn't know the company. He didn't know the people. And he was on a call and he started crying. It was very touching because he deeply cared about what happened to this person. And everything he did led from a people first perspective, everything. And you could see it in him all the way through. And that was a huge lesson to me, that when or if you put people first, even if you don't know them, so many things can happen that are good. And I worry that we're becoming less sensitive that way as a society. And I think there's a lot of opportunity to improve our respect and to improve our collaboration with others.
Could not agree more. We're outwardly focused. We have we deal with people in such a different manner. It literally has the potential to be world changing, life changing, if we just are intentional about it.
Yeah. Most of us react, one way or the other to the people are around us, right? If we're treated well, we tend to react and respect well. If we tend to be disrespected, we tend to kind of react to that. And they're both very reciprocal and very viral. And that way we can be the person setting the tone for the positive.
And if we're respectful, we're likely to get respect in return. But more importantly, as a human being, why would I want to give up control of my emotions and the way in which I handle things based upon somebody else's actions? Why give that somebody else that type of control? Just be a good person.
Your statement right there, powerful.
Hey, well, buddy, I can't thank you enough for being on here. I know you're a busy guy. Whenever you work for a company, that when I start talking about the money projects and stuff, and it starts with a B, then we know we're dealing with real money. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us and for all that you've done for society, for first responders, and also for veterans. Thank you so much.
Michael, thank you for taking your time. I am so honored to even be considered to have the conversation with you. And one takeaway for me, Michael, is your depth. of life knowledge and experience, from being so humble about your work as a first responder to, just helping make these stories of life rich. And thank you so much for making me laugh on some of the technology elements. I had forgotten a couple of those, and this was a ton of fun to meet with you. So thank you.
And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us today. If you enjoyed the episode, and we sure hope you did, be sure to follow the podcast on your favorite provider. You can also find this episode and all our previous episodes on our website at commandpresence.net/podcast. You can also find us over on YouTube, and be sure to follow us on LinkedIn. And as you go throughout the week, folks, please remember, be the leader you wish you had.